What's up? It is draft day. Welcome in to another, live episode of the Pack a Day podcast. First of all, thank you guys so much for joining me. We've already got some people in the chat setting it up. I'm going to get to David's birthday question in just a second. Happy birthday, David. Before we get to questions, and I'm going to do an hour's worth of questions if I can, if there's enough questions to do so. So that's my plan. I don't really have anything else to talk about, but just super excited for this draft. I'm so happy in a lot of ways that the Rodgers and Lamar Jackson stuff is done. We can just focus on the draft moving forward. And this obviously has the ability to be a pretty monumental week for Green Bay, to say the least, with trading Aaron Rodgers, but certainly even draft with picking 13th, having 2 early second round picks, 3 picks in the top 50, 4 picks in the top 100. This is a draft that Green Bay has the ability to do a lot of work with. And I think Brian Gute is going to be super active moving up and down the draft. So I do want to get to the birthday question first. I appreciate you, David. Happy birthday. Turning 55. Absolutely amazing. Hope you're as pumped up for the draft as I am. And yes, I will answer your question. What are the odds the Packers draft a quarterback on day 2 and day 3? I think day 2 is extremely slim. So first of all, if Hendon Hooker goes today, somehow if he ends up going end of round 1, there might not be a quarterback selected at all in day 2. If there is, Jake Haener, the quarterback out of Fresno, is probably the guy. I actually spent some extra time watching him today. I hadn't had the opportunity to take a deep dive into him. He's a really fun quarterback, a little bit undersized. I don't think he's going to be Green Bay's particular cup of tea, but he'd probably, especially if Hendon Hooker goes today, he's probably the only quarterback that even has a chance of going on day 2 of the draft. Even if Hooker does, I don't think Green Bay is going to be in play for that either. So to me, this is probably, they're not going to take one day 1, probably not Hendon Hooker day 2, probably not, I don't think anyone else on day 2. So I think day 3 is probably where you start looking at quarterbacks more. I think Clayton Tune out of the University of Houston has a really good chance of going to Green Bay at some point. Start looking at him in round 4 or round 5. And if they take one a little bit later, keep an eye on Tyson Bagent out of Shepherd. He is a 6'3", 210-pound quarterback. I always get the BCS, the Bowl Championship Series, FBS, all of it mixed up, but he's a D2, D3 quarterback. I forget which one it is, but he's a really fun quarterback, and late day 3, 7th round, somewhere around there is where I would sort of expect him to go. So definitely think Green Bay leaves this draft with a quarterback, but watch more day 3. Clayton Tune, 4th or 5th round, is the guy that I'm really keeping an eye on. And again, happy birthday, David. All right, Natalie, super appreciate this. I would love to have 50,000 subs. First of all, if you haven't liked this yet, please make sure to like it. That will help the algorithm for everyone out there, just so more people get in, we get more questions and everything like that. So make sure to like and comment, and you guys are doing awesome with that already. But really appreciate you guys being here. I love doing this stuff, and it still blows my mind that I get to talk Packers and draft, and anyone cares about it. So Natalie, super kind of you, and I'm going to keep grinding until we get to those 50,000 followers. And Judy, you didn't even add a comment, Judy, but I'm super appreciative of that as well. Super nice of you. I will let you guys know right now, any super chats or any, any monetary chats, whatever, I will go right to the top and answer your question right away. But I'm going to go right down the list. I'm not fancy. I don't have anyone moderating this or anything. So I'm just going to be going right down the list and try to answer as many questions as I can possibly get to between now and 5 p.m. Central Time. Not necessarily a question here from Kevin. Wants the trade down and get a late first plus a first round next year if possible. Kevin, that is one of my absolute dream scenarios in this draft. Listen, I think when you're picking at 13, you have to be slightly careful to not move out just for the sake of moving out, because your hope is that you're not picking that early in the draft all that often. And if you have the opportunity to get a massive difference-making player, just sometimes those guys are only found in the top 10, top 15 of the draft. And if you're picking there and one of those guys is there, you should probably take them. And in my opinion, if somebody even like a Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is, fits what they love, hits a position of need, would give Jordan Love another playmaker. I love everything about that. I think if somebody like that is there, if all of a sudden a Christian Gonzalez or a Tyree Wilson or someone like that would fall to Green Bay, I think there's some no-brainer picks that if they're there at 13, you just have to take them. Because again, you're just not hoping to be in the habit of picking that early. But if your primary guys are off the board, and even if a guy like a Lucas Van Ness, who I really like and is my prediction for this draft, even if he's there, I think if some team pulls a New Orleans Saints trade and is willing to give you their later first round pick this year and a first round pick next year, they also got a 5th round pick in that deal, by the way. If they're willing to give you that, that is the dream scenario. And here's the big thing. Next year's draft is, by all intents and purposes, going to be much better than this year's draft is. I think this is an okay draft. I think you're going to be able to find guys in this draft, but next draft is going to be much, much better. And I think if you have the ability to get in next year's draft, plus still take a guy at the end of the first round, where I think the real value is end of first, early second, even middle second, I think there's a lot of good picks, even into the third. I think that's where the real meat and potatoes of this draft is. I love that idea. And I think the other thing is, anytime you get a lottery ticket for next year for a team's first round pick, like that is massively important, right? So let's say you trade with the Saints or some other team, because the Saints have a bottom first round pick this year. You know, they're aggressive moving up. The Saints pick next year, whatever team it ends up being, they're always like a quarterback injury away from potentially picking in the top 5, top 10. Or you could just have a Denver Broncos season from a season ago, a team that was expected to be really, really good and just ultimately wasn't. And all of a sudden they're picking really high. So you get a lottery ticket that could end up being a top 5, top 10 pick next year, that you take that and get what you can get in this year's draft. And then just, you know, you're not punting to next year because you still get a first, but that would be another dream scenario for this draft. All right, let's see. What else do we got here? You had a dream we took a running back at 13, woke up in a cold sweat. I think, Owen, you are going to be safe. I don't think you have to worry about running back. I think Bijan Robinson is going to be gone by the time the Packers pick anyway. If he's there, I still don't think they take him. And yeah, I think you're probably safe. And I don't think they would go Jahmyr Gibbs that early either. So Owen, I think you can sleep easy tonight after they do not take a running back at pick 13. All right, let's see. What do we got here? First of all, I love that. I didn't even see the second part. I love that you think I'm right. I love that. You've got Jackson Smith-Njigba, Broderick Jones, or Lucas Van Ness. Those are my 3 guys. So for those of you who didn't see my tweet today or the video from today, I narrowed it down to 3 players that I think are going to be in play for Green Bay at pick 13. And that's Jackson Smith-Njigba, Lucas Van Ness, and Broderick Jones. And here's why I think that. First of all, if you go 16 of the last 20 first round picks, I'm including Kevin King in this, who was pick 33 in their pseudo first round pick that year. 16 of the last 20 were premium position players, which is quarterback, edge, offensive tackle, defensive lineman, or corner. Now I'm including, I know they haven't done it, but I think in modern NFL, wide receivers probably included in that as well. We know they love highly athletic players. We know they love younger players that still have a lot of developmental upside. And all 3 of these players, depending on if they consider wide receiver a premium position or not, which again, they haven't shown the propensity to do that over the last 20 plus years ish. But I do think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be in play at that spot. I think all 3 of these players hit everything that Green Bay looks for. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to give them a slot wide receiver for Jordan Love, who just gets open. He's consistently separating. He catches the ball extremely well. He can catch the ball down the field. I think he's going to be able to play outside and inside, although I don't even know that you want to play him a ton outside because he's going to be so freaking good on the inside. You've got an explosive playmaker with Christian Watson on the outside. You've got an all-around wide receiver with Romeo Doubs on the other. And now you've got an absolute slot weapon in Jackson Smith-Njigba. I would love that for Green Bay. Lucas Van Ness, I know he didn't ever start, and it doesn't matter. It absolutely does not matter. I tweeted this out as well. The draft is not about what they did in college. It's what they're going to do in the NFL. And he is going to be a fantastic NFL edge rusher. He'd be a perfect complement to Rashawn Gary. He'd be Rashawn Gary's replacement, for this upcoming season until he's healthy. So you probably go Preston and Van Ness at the edge with Enigbare being the rotational guy until Gary's back. And long-term, you've got Gary and Van Ness along the edge with Enigbare as the backup. I love that trio long-term for Green Bay that has the ability to be fantastic at arguably one of the most important positions in the NFL. So love Lucas Van Ness there. Again, super athletic, young, hits every Green Bay threshold, exactly what they're looking for. And then Broderick Jones. I do think offensive line is going to be something that they very much consider. I think Skoronski's probably gone. I think Paris Johnson's probably gone. I think Broderick Jones, this is right around the time that he goes. 4th potential Georgia first-round pick in 3 years, coupling with Quay and Devontae and, of course, Eric Stokes. I think that could potentially, they continue the trend there. but more importantly, again, has the ability to be a long-term offensive tackle. The thing I like about him is, like, let's say you take a Paris Johnson. To me, Paris Johnson is a left tackle all day, every day. And that's a little bit complex with David Bakhtiari at left tackle right now. And you can move Paris for a year and maybe say, like, well, we're going to kick him to right tackle. Him playing a new position in his rookie year, I'm not totally confident he even beats out Josh Nijman in his first year in that situation. So I think you're probably taking him as a long-term replacement to Bakhtiari, which great. He's a phenomenal player. I would love the pick, but it makes it a little bit more complicated with him and Bakhtiari just being two true left tackles, and you don't really want to move either of them. I think with Darnell Wright, he's a true right tackle. He can kick to left, but yeah, clearly you don't need it. I think that would be a really good pick. I think Darnell Wright's going to slide just a little bit in this draft. And then, with Broderick Jones, the thing that I love is he can be your long-term left tackle. You can kick him to right tackle right now, and he can compete with Yash and Zach Tom at right tackle. I think you can play him at left guard and start him at left guard, have then Elton take center, and Josh Myers then compete with John Runyon Jr. at right guard. I think you could go that realm. I think you could even play him at right guard. I think he could start at right guard, and then, you figure out the rest there. Maybe Elton Jenkins goes to center. Maybe John Runyon Jr. goes back to left. I think they can do a variety of different things with him that maybe they can't do with anyone other than Peter Skoronski, who, like I said, is probably gone. And I think the really nice thing is that, Broderick Jones gives you long-term left tackle upside, where I think you're probably looking at Skoronski long-term as more of a interior offensive lineman. All right. Now we had a few different super chats in here and stuff. So let me try to get to those really quick. All right. Judy, did you do this again? I really appreciate you. I'm leaning towards offensive line for number 13. Edge seems a deeper class. Thinking Bakhtiari is playing his last year for Green Bay. Broderick Jones is my hope. Well, we just talked about him, and I'm right there with you. I think there is a very strong chance that Broderick Jones is absolutely in play there. Natalie, do you see any chance Gute trades up to ensure he gets his guy, or is it sit tight or trade down only? I think this really depends on how the draft board goes. If you told me right now that they loved the three guys that I just mentioned, Lucas Van Ness, Broderick Jones, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, I would not be shocked. I think there's a real legitimate chance that all three of those guys are real true Packer guys. I also think Christian Gonzalez is probably on that list. I think, probably the two edge rushers and Will Anderson, as well as Tyree Wilson. Maybe Jalen Carter, that's going to be a little bit more up in the air, but I think there's going to be quite a few guys that they have that they really, really like. And if that's the case, I think they're going to be probably keeping an eye on it. And as long as, if they get to pick 9 and there's 4 of those guys left, all right, they're feeling good. They get to pick 10 and there's 3 left, they're feeling good. If all of a sudden they get to pick 11 and there's only one of the guys left that they really like, I think that's where you could start to see Green Bay potentially moving up to get the guy that they really want left. But I do think there's going to be quite a few guys that really fit what they look for at that spot. I think the other thing here is, assuming they don't go tight end at 13, which I can't rule out entirely. I just hope they kind of don't. I would rather them trade down. But even if all their guys are off the board at pick 13, I don't think they would hate moving down to pick 18 to 20, 22, and getting a Michael Mayer or a Dalton Kincaid and picking up additional draft capital as well. So I think Gute's in a really good spot where he's probably going to have 1 or 2 really premium position players that are available to him at that spot. Probably doesn't have to move up to get one of them. And even if it does go wrong and something crazy happens where all of them are gone, especially that probably means a quarterback maybe fell to them. And that means that maybe there's more trade value for pick 13 because a quarterback is still on the board. That gives them, the opportunity to move down and maybe even get a little bit more than they would have had a quarterback not been on the board. And like I said, I think moving down and getting a tight end plus picking up maybe like a second round pick in the process isn't worst case scenario either. So I don't think we're going to see it, but I know there had been a tweet out there. I forget who tweeted it, that Green Bay was one of the teams that was potentially looking to move up. To me, if you told me Green Bay moved up, it would have to be one of the edge rush, the top 2 edge rushers that fell, maybe Christian Gonzalez. But if you're looking at a trade up, right? Like, think through this naturally. So Will Anderson, why can't I think of his name all of a sudden? Tyree Wilson, right? Yeah. So those 2 guys, 2 of my favorite guys in this draft. I think both of them are phenomenal players. And if all of a sudden they get to like pick 8 or 9 or something like that, and they're still there, I think that would be maybe an area where Gute pounces. And then Christian Gonzalez would be maybe the other one where he moves up a couple picks. And if all of a sudden he's there at pick 10 or 11, that he tries to move up aggressively for. Those 3 are, all three of the top players, like top 5 players in this draft for me. So I think if those 3 are in play, you could maybe see him start to look to move up a little bit, but I can't really fathom anyone else that they'd be aggressively moving up for at this point. All right, John, thank you so much. If I'm Brian Gutekunst, I'm trading up to go get my guy. Green Bay has a lot of picks, thinking 9 or 10 for a third. We don't need it anyway. So one of the things that I think Green Bay could do in this draft is start looking at, can they get back into the end of round 1? And I think why they may look to do that, let's say they do get a Lucas Van Ness or a Broderick Jones with that pick 13, maybe even a Jackson Smith-Njigba. Then the question becomes, can you take pick 42 and maybe their third rounder and get back up to the end of the first round? And is maybe a Michael Mayer or a Dalton Kincaid still there? And imagine if all of a sudden you leave the draft with a Jackson Smith-Njigba and a Michael Mayer, like that would be a dream scenario, or a Jackson Smith-Njigba and a Dalton Kincaid. Now you've got 2 guys that can win at a very high level in the slot. Or even if they just want to move up and ultimately make sure that they get one of the tight ends, maybe they really like Darnell Washington, maybe they like Luke Musgrave, and they just want to make sure that those guys don't all go off the board. So they move to the bottom of round 1 to take one of those guys. That could certainly be in play too. So if they move up, I would be looking more at 42 and 45 to the end of round 1 and potentially looking at a tight end at that specific position. That allows them to still get their premium position early and still get one of their tight ends in this draft. Just making sure I didn't miss any other super chats here. I know a lot of chats have come in, so let's see. I think that's all of them for now. All right, let's see. All right, Packers won't be bad enough to draft Harrison Jr. next year. Let's hope not. Let's hope they are not that bad to be in the top 5 next year, because that's probably where he is going. I think Nicholas had the question. Do you think we should wait till next year to take a wide receiver like Marvin Harrison? Listen, if we're taking Marvin Harrison, let's hope that Aaron Rodgers played 65% of the snaps and somehow the Jets went 3-14 in the process. That would be the best way to take Marvin Harrison Jr. next year. I guess they could potentially have 2 firsts if they want to package up and get a Marvin Harrison Jr., but I don't think you ever wait in a draft for a specific player, unless that player is Caleb Williams. Like if there are teams that right now, I guarantee you, like Washington, even though they have a Sam Howell right now, they're probably thinking, hey, if Sam Howell's awesome all of a sudden, great. And we'll move forward with Sam Howell as our starter then. But if not, we're probably just going to lose a lot of games and then we'll go get Caleb Williams. Like Caleb Williams is probably the one player where you're thinking about, all right, that's somebody I need to keep an eye on and think about drafting next year if I'm a bad team with no quarterback. Other than that, like almost anything can happen, right? A player that you think is a top 5 player right now might end up having a terrible season next year. They could have a torn ACL. Maybe a player that's an underclassman that you're expecting to come out ends up staying in college. So I don't think you can base draft decisions right now on what you're going to do next, or like what you're hoping for next season. And you can't predict how your season's going to play out. Even if you think you're going to be a terrible, like I thought the Texans were going to be a team that like barely won a game, and they ultimately like still ended up terrible, but they ended up winning a few more games than I thought. I thought they would for sure hold the number 1 pick in the draft, and they didn't. Thankfully the Bears of all teams were the one that was the worst team in the NFL. So you just never know. You never quite know what's going to happen, and your team might end up winning or losing more games than you expected. So you don't want to base any future or like current draft decisions on what's going to maybe be available next year. All right, let's see. What is my beverage of choice tonight? I am currently drinking, at least when I'm not talking a million miles per hour, a pistachio cream ale from Indeed Brewing at the moment. So the fun part is this is one of those weird things. I actually hate pistachios, but I love this beer, and I love pistachio ice cream, and I love pistachio flavoring, but the actual nut itself, let's not get into food takes. Nobody wants food takes. We're going to get back to the draft. Let's see. Do you think Gute will package 42 and 45 to move up to get Benton in round 1? I do not think he will do it to get Benton in round 1. I do think Benton could easily be in play at pick 42 or 45. I think that is very within the realm of possibility, but I don't think he's going to move up to get him specifically late in round 1. I do think they could move up 42 and 45 into the first round if there was a player that they loved. I do think, like I said, Keanu Benton could be in play at 42 or 45. Just don't necessarily the combination of those things where they trade 42 and 45 up to get Keanu Benton at that point in the draft. All right, Joseph. I think that Kincaid is one of those difference makers kind of players like Kittle or Kelsey. Do you think he's one of those guys that Green Bay has on their radar at 13? So this is a loaded question. I really appreciate all your questions, guys. These are coming in really, really fast, faster than I thought they would. So I'm sorry if I missed them. Keep putting them in there, and I'm just going to kind of go through as best that I can. But this is a really loaded question. So first of all, I don't know that Dalton Kincaid is a difference maker, and I think it's been extremely hard to identify difference makers at tight ends in the draft. In fact, if you look at the last 20 plus years of tight ends in the first round, really no team has been able to do it. Maybe Kyle Pitts ends up being the next really great tight end. He's had certainly a couple really good seasons so far. I don't think they've used him correctly. He hasn't had a quarterback. I think it's been slightly disappointing based on his top 5 draft position, but that might be the one that they ultimately identified correctly. But more often than not, teams have not been able to identify those players in the first round at tight end. And if you look at almost all the great ones as of late, look at all the really good ones right now: Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce. I mean, you guys know all the names. Like, none of them are first round picks. They're all later round picks. Rob Gronkowski, the last great one, was not a first round pick. So this is not a position. George Kittle, not a first round pick. So this has not been a position where it's been premium positions. Like I said, teams have had a really tough time identifying them. Now, if you get the next difference maker at tight end, how big of a difference do Travis Kelce and George Kittle make for their offenses? It is insane. Like, there is almost no bigger cheat code other than quarterback right now than having a mismatch at tight end that you just can't find a perfect solution to. You put a linebacker on him, he's not fast enough. You put a corner on him, he's not big enough. You put a safety on him, he might not be big enough or fast enough. Like, it's what the heck do you do? And like in George Kittle's case, all right, I'm going to bring in a extra, like, even if you get like a perfect, like 6'3", 200-pound like player who can match with them in coverage, all right, well, he's just going to block you off the ball and we're just going to run the ball right at your face. Like, all right. And you don't know, George Kittle's in the game. And all right, is he going to be a, slot wide receiver George Kittle, or is he going to be, I'm literally going to throw you into the ground George Kittle? Do I need to put more of a run defense on the field, or do I need to put a pass defense on the field? It's just the ultimate nightmare, right? So if you're a team and you are convicted that a Darnell Washington or a Kincaid or a Mayer or any of these guys are that type of mismatch nightmare, I get it. I totally understand it. It's just that teams haven't really done a great job in identifying those players in the first round, taking them and having them be successful. I think the other thing that's really hard with tight end is, in my opinion, outside of quarterback, I think it's actually the most complex position in the NFL to learn transitioning from college to the NFL. You have to learn all of the run blocking assignments, like an offensive lineman. You have to learn all of the blitz pickups and pass protection assignments, like an offensive lineman. You have to be able to block edge rushers, like your Khalil Macks and Von Millers of the world, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes with help from a running back, but you've got to be able to do that. And then you need to learn an entire NFL route tree. You need to learn how to beat corners and safeties and linebackers. You need to learn how to uncover in zone. You need to learn how to uncover in man. Like, it is so complex. And a lot of times, by the time you sort of start to figure it out, you're in the 4th or 5th year, and now you're an unrestricted free agent. And now you have to decide, like, all right, this guy's just figuring it out, but he hasn't done much in his first 4 seasons, or at least he hasn't lived up to the hype. And now am I going to give them in this huge contract, even though, so you end up having him leave to another team? Mike Gesicki, who I hasn't turned out, and I think he probably got a little bit less than value, but he went for nothing this offseason. And I don't know that he's ever going to develop into the next tight end. But a lot of times when you start seeing some of these tight ends start to develop, well, now you've either got to pick up an expensive 5th-year option or put a bunch of money into them when they haven't been that great yet. So I think that's the other thing. As far as whether or not he's on the radar at 13, I do think that there's a possibility that Green Bay goes tight end at 13. I think it would be really, really rich. It would be one of my least favorite things that Gute could do at 13, quite honestly. Unless you get the next Kelce or Gronk or one of those guys. If you do, it's totally worth it. Again, teams haven't done a great job of it. But if I had to guess personally, my guess is Mayer is ahead of Kincaid on their list. Don't know it for sure. Can't say it for sure. But if I just total gut feel, I would say that Mayer is going to be a little bit ahead. I think they're going to like that he is a true wide tight end. He's a good blocker. He's a good receiver, can do a little bit of everything. I love his red zone prowess. Like, he's going to bring a lot to any team that he goes to. Knowing what Matt LaFleur likes, knowing what Green Bay generally likes, I think it would be Mayer over Kincaid, but neither would necessarily shock me if you told me they ended up with a tight end in round 1, whether it was at pick 13 or by trading down. Neither Kincaid or Mayer would certainly shock me. Sorry, I know that was a very long answer, but hopefully that answers your question. All right. I know. Let's see here. All right. So is there a pick tonight, assuming we stay at 13, that will leave you scratching your head? I know I'm in the minority, but offensive tackle at 13 is not ideal. 1 second, please. All right. So leave me scratching my head. I think quarterback would leave me scratching my head. If they took any of them, it would be pretty crazy. I think that would leave a lot of jaws dropped. Bijan Robinson would probably leave me a little bit scratching my head. I think you could twist yourself in a pretzel enough to say if he's there at 13 and he's such a special player that Green Bay might ultimately be thinking, hey, we don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback anymore and we have to learn to win in a different way. And that might be running the football and playing strong defense and special teams. And therefore, we're going to go get a potentially generational running back in Bijan Robinson. I think it's bad business. I think taking a first round pick running back is great. I'm a little bit better off with it, knowing that Christian McCaffrey just got a trade haul a season ago later in his career. So if things don't work out, these running backs do have a little bit of value on the trade market, but Christian McCaffrey's don't come along very often either. Overall, that would leave me scratching my head certainly a little bit. Let's see. Realistically, a Keion White would leave me scratching my head. Overaged edge rusher. You got invited to the draft, which usually means that you kind of have a first round guarantee. It's not always the case, but nobody really has him mocked in the first round. Outside of age, he hits everything that Green Bay looks for. And that would be one of those like classic Green Bay moments where like Jackson Smith and Jigba's on the board. And then all of a sudden Green Bay selects Keion White out of Georgia Tech. That would leave me beyond scratching my head and jaw on the floor. I think those would probably be the main one. And then Brian Branch, I think would a little bit. I like Brian Branch. He's a good defensive back, but I think Green Bay needs a true safety. Branch is more of a star player, slot player, undersized, doesn't hit their athletic thresholds. That would leave me scratching my head a little bit as well. Outside of that, like if you told me any wide receiver out of Jackson Smith and Jigba would be surprising. I personally like offensive tackle. I think it's a premium position. I don't think you can ever have enough blocking guys up front. Offensive linemen are force multipliers. They make your quarterback better. They make your running back better. They make your receivers better. They make everything on offense better. So I never mind going offensive line. So yeah, I think those would probably be the ones mainly that would leave me scratching my head at 13. I hope Keion White is there in the second. Yeah, then we're good. We're good at that point. If he's there at 42 or 45, don't be surprised, by the way, if he is there at 42 or 45, if Green Bay pounces on Keion White. I think they would love what he would bring to the table. Give him some versatility. He can play a little bit inside, play a little bit outside. He'd be a very fun athletic freak to play with on the outside. Yeah, I would not hate that at all. And I think he very much will be in play at 42 or 45. Appreciate the chat, Brett. Oh man, we just went from Brett to Aaron. Is there a Jordan that's next on the list? We have to go to Jordan next. If there's a Jordan in the chat and you ask a question next, because then we just went from Brett's question to Aaron's question to Jordan's question. Aaron, been watching since the beginning of last season. I've really enjoyed making the show a part of my daily routine. Excited for this draft. Aaron, really appreciate that. Super kind of you to say. I'm just happy that I get to do this 365 days a year. All right, I have to see if there's any Jordans in here. I don't think we have a Jordan. Unacceptable. That would have been amazing. All right. Eurostep podcast. First of all, Eurostep. What a night last night. We're not going to talk about it, but that was beyond brutal. Would Kincaid at 13 be a huge mistake, or is his pass catching ability justifiable? Sorry if it's been covered 1,000 times. We talked a little bit about Kincaid. I don't think it's a huge mistake. If anyone's been listening to me, I am anti tight end round one. So taking one at 13 is not going to be my cup of tea. As I mentioned earlier, if you get the next great pass catching tight end and Kincaid is the next Kelsey or Gronk or whoever he wants to be, or in that realm of player, if you get the next Travis Kelsey, you could argue that's worth a top 3 pick in the draft, top 2. Like he's just so unstoppable in the passing game. He makes everything work. So if you get the guy, if he works out, I'm not hating. And that's why it's so, we have to caution ourselves. And I've learned this lesson the hard way as well, but every single one of these players, everyone that's going to get drafted first round through 7th round has a crap ton of talent. And you can list a list of strengths for every player that could make them a really good NFL player from pick 1 to Mr. Irrelevant. Look at Brock Purdy a season ago. You can make a list of weaknesses from pick 1 to Mr. Irrelevant that are like, hey, if this doesn't get fixed, like that could be something that makes them be a 3rd string player out of the league in 3 or 4 years. That's why this is so hard. It's such a projection game. No matter what they did in college, no matter how good they were, it doesn't automatically translate into the NFL. And it's a projection game. So as much as I have my convictions of like, don't go running back and don't go tight end round one, man, if you got the next Jamal Charles and Jahmyr Gibbs, or if you got the next, amazing running back, whoever you want to compare Bijan Robinson to, if you got the next, Kittle or Gronk or Kelsey at tight end, like that's going to be an amazing pick. I don't care where you took them. So just be careful with like I'm not saying you personally, but like everyone, like just freaking out after a draft. I freaked out after they took Rashawn Gary. And many people might remember that, but I was on the Cheesehead TV draft feed and I was not happy that they took Rashawn Gary. They were picking at pick 12. And if you're picking at pick 12, much like pick 13 this year, I want everything, right? I want production. I want upside. I want no injuries. I want my cake. I want to eat it too. I want everything. And when I looked at Rashawn Gary at pick 12, I liked the tape. I understood the tape, but there was no production in college to the level of being picked that high. And he had the shoulder injury. If you're already coming in with like a shoulder injury that might have needed surgery, that was the thought at the time, like picking that, when you're picking that high, and especially when there's a guy like Brian Burns on the board that didn't have any of that and had incredible production, that to me was really troublesome because if you don't have production, if you have already got injury issues, that's a concern to me. Again, at 12, I want my cake and eat it too. I want everything. I want upside. I want athleticism. I want traits. I want age. I want premium position. I want production. I want everything. And the fact that he had two major red flags was an issue for me at the time. We've all seen how it's turned out. Rashawn Gary, prior to the injury this year, especially the last couple of seasons, has been phenomenal. Nobody's complaining about Rashawn Gary getting picked at pick 12. So we never know how this is going to end out and end up. And any of these players could end up phenomenal. Any of them could end up busting. And that's just the name of the game. And the other thing I'll say really quick too is like, we get so caught up in the order, right? Of like, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And the person who was picked in the first has to be the best. And the person who was picked second has to be the second best, and so on and so forth. A GM's job is to try to get one home run player and 2 or 3 starters in a draft overall. If they can do that, if they can try to get that home run player, they can try to get a Pro Bowl caliber player and 2 additional quality starters out of a draft. That's the goal. And at some point, you're just playing the percentages. And if you can have 10 picks and you know what, the all pro ends up coming from the 5th round and you get a solid starter that's going to help you for 10 years in the 3rd round, and your rotational good starter, average starter was the 1st round guy or 2nd round guy, and the other one was a bust, who cares? It doesn't matter at all. Like, you just need to try to get your home run player, all pro-ish caliber, Pro Bowl caliber player, and 2 quality starters. Doesn't matter how you do it. Doesn't matter what round that you get them in. Like, that's what you're thinking as a GM. That's why you see a lot of times, a GM go home run swing early in the 1st round, premium position, extreme athlete. You're going big game hunting. You want to hit on that Pro Bowl, all pro player as much as you can. But a lot of that, especially on day 3 of the draft too, you might start seeing some guys that have extreme athleticism that did nothing in college or things like that, because you're trying to hit home runs. You're trying to get some of those guys that, hey, if something clicks, they can become that Pro Bowl, caliber player or a really sound starter. So it doesn't matter sometimes if they get a good quality tight end in the 1st and all of a sudden their 4th round guy ends up developing into an all pro, who cares? It doesn't matter. Right. So that's why you just have to kind of let this play out sometimes. That wasn't meant towards you, by the way. Crayon Eater. All right. I like it. $1.99. Appreciate that, Crayon Eater. Very, very kind of you. Natalie, you are the MVP so far. How much time do I put into content each week? How far in advance are you planning your videos? That depends. So I have a notebook full of ideas, first of all, of things that I can do, of topics I can discuss. I've usually got, 10 or 15 ideas, kind of floating around. A lot of times it'll be something where I think of it the day of, or something happens. There's a breaking news, Aaron Rodgers gets traded or whatever, and that comes quickly. And then it just depends on the topic. Certain topics, like you guys asking me questions today, I can just riff on for 20, 30 minutes without even having to think about it. So sometimes I jot down a Cliff Notes version in 15, 20 minutes and I can just go. Other times, especially on my draft episodes where I have to do a lot of prep, I'm doing film study. I'm watching, all 22 of players. I'm doing a lot of research on the players. And then I'm putting together everything that I want to discuss. Those obviously take a heck of a lot longer. So it just depends on the topic, what's going on. And yeah, it can vary quite a lot. And like when I'm in the season and doing the grading the pack episodes where I go through and grade every single player on every play. Yeah, that certainly takes some time as well. So it all varies by week and specifically what I'm going to be talking about week by week as well. But I appreciate that again, Natalie. Laura, any draft rumors about the Packers? I know there was a couple out there. One was that they are open to moving up in the draft. I forget who tweeted that one out. Tony Pauline said that there was a lot of buzz about the Packers taking a tight end early in the draft, as early as number 13. So those, I think, were the main ones that I saw. If anyone else saw any other ones, definitely post them in the chat. All right, Matthew, love your work. Hoping for JSN tonight. You and me both, buddy. Like, I say this every now and again. The last time that the Packers took a player that I like really wanted the day of the draft, like I was just super geeked about, was Vonnie Holiday. Like there have been players that I've really liked on day one of the draft, no question about it, and that I've been, some level of excited for. But the last time they took a guy that I was just like, this is one of my guys, I can't wait, was literally Vonnie Holiday. So it's been a hot second. So if they get a Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I love, I would be beyond thrilled with that. And I'm right there with you. I think you would add a lot to Green Bay's offense. I think you'd be perfect for Jordan Love. Like, just sign me the heck up right now. By the way, whoever asked the rumor question, there's been a lot of buzz about JSN to the Packers as well. Thank you for that, Matthew. All right. Marcus. Green Bay Twitter would have a breakdown if they took a tackle with JSN and Tyree Smith on the board with, I'm assuming you mean the Tennessee tackle or Tyree Wilson, maybe. Yes. If they took a tackle with JSN and I'm assuming you mean Tyree Wilson. If they took a tackle with either of those two on the board, yeah, I think some people would have a little bit of a breakdown. I would be more upset if they took a tackle with Tyree Wilson on the board. Tyree Wilson's medicals could cause him to fall, which if that's the case, he's just going to fall and Green Bay might not be able to take him based on the medicals. So that would suck for him. When I put on Tyree Wilson's tape, I'm like, this might be the best guy in this draft, period. He is so freaking explosive. He is so fun. The name that immediately came to mind was prime Julius Peppers. Like, that's what I saw. Now he's got a ways to go. He's not that nuanced yet. But the pure athleticism and what he can ultimately become, the ceiling is insane. So if Tyree Wilson was on the board and they took any of the offensive tackles, I don't care which one of them's there, that I would be more upset about. If they took Tyree Wilson, over JSN, I would have no issues with that. If they took a offensive tackle ahead of JSN, I would be surprised. And I know, yes, Green Bay Twitter might have a breakdown. I can understand that more. I can understand wanting to get the big guys up front that are harder to find. Now, Green Bay's done a really great job of finding offensive linemen later in the draft, and they haven't done that as well lately with wide receiver. So you can make an argument that Green Bay is better off taking the wide receiver now and fishing for offensive linemen later because they've been so good at it. But I can at least understand the value of getting really good offensive linemen at this point in the draft because those guys usually are hard to find. And I really like all four of them. I like Jones. I like Paris Johnson. I like Skoronski. I like Darnell Wright. I like all of those guys. So I could understand that more. But I think if JSN's there and he's not taken, yes, I think Green Bay Twitter is probably going to have a meltdown. Oh, what are your positives and negatives with Gute? Appreciate the chat, Brian. I think this is going to take time to figure out. First of all, and Aaron Nagler, when he was on the show earlier this week, pointed this out, and it was worth remembering. And I'm glad this is not the same situation of Ted Thompson, where Ted Thompson had basically complete autonomy of the team. Brian is the GM, but he shares footing, of course, with Matt LaFleur and with Russ Ball. And then all three of them have to report into Mark Murphy. So there's more of a organizational decision structure there that isn't just Gute having full autonomy and complete control of the team. So when I look at some of the negatives, I think last year, the contract that was given to Aaron Rodgers, which I think could have caused a much bigger issue had there not been a Jets team that was willing to take on that contract. That was a really bad contract that they gave. Now, I think Gute would have been much more likely to move on from Aaron Rodgers last year. And it was probably more Matt and Russ and Mark that wanted to hang on to Aaron. So like that might look like a really bad Gute move, but that might not have actually been a Gute move, right? I think overall as an organization, if we're just going to talk about all four of them together, I think one of the things that this organization's had a really hard time with is straddling the line between when to really, really go for it, when to really go all in, and when to pull back and say, all right, this isn't our year. And I give them credit for saying, hey, this year's not our year, moving on from Aaron and not spending money in free agency. They've done a pretty good job of that this year. They never really found, and this goes back to Ted. This goes back to, and this is obviously with Brian as well. They haven't done a great job of figuring out, okay, we've got a team to compete right now. We're not going to put Ladarius Gunter out at corner. All right, we've got a team to compete right now. We need better wide receivers. Like, they have done a very poor job of finding the year that can be their year and making it their year. And we're now in the time and place where there's going to be 3 or 4 teams every year now. Every single year, there are going to be at least 3 or 4 teams that are all in, that are for it, that are trading for Aaron Rodgers, that are doing everything they can to win a Super Bowl. They're going to mortgage everything. They're going to be in full Rams FDM picks mode. The 49ers, depending on what happens at quarterback there, are basically there, and they've already traded away a bunch of picks for Christian McCaffrey. The Jets, we know, are there. Like, there are going to be 3 or 4 teams every year. And even if you're a team that gets everything right, and the Eagles put a bunch of stuff into last year and they got Jalen Hurts right, they got everything right, even then you still might run into a Patrick Mahomes and it just might not even be good enough. So I think that's the biggest complaint I have. On the flip side, I think Brian's done a really great job, and the scouting staff has done a really good job of finding cheap talent. Guys like Rasul Douglas, Keyshawn Nixon, Devondre Campbell, like guys like that who have played huge roles for this team. Rick Wagner, like, that have made almost nothing. I think they've done a really good job in that regard. And had they not, like, this could have been a lot worse over the last few seasons. So they've done a really good job with that. And I think Brian's overall philosophy of going big game hunting early in the draft has paid off more often than not. You look at Jair Alexander, Rashawn Gary. We're about to find out with Jordan Love. Like, they've gone pretty aggressive in their first rounds, with their picks. And I think more often than not, that's the right philosophy. And it's paid some pretty big dividends, especially with Gary and with Jair so far. And I think there's a chance that continues to pay dividends, especially with what happens with Jordan. All right. I think I missed, but 1 second here. Love your stuff. Hope for the best edge available to pair with Gary. May be more impactful than a wide receiver or tight end, in my opinion. Thoughts? Yeah, edge would be great if they can get one of the top guys. Nolan Smith's not a guy that we talked about. I really like Nolan Smith. He's super fun. I hope that what the Eagles did last year opens up some eyes to what you can do with a Hassan Reddick and an undersized edge rusher. And Nolan Smith holds up at the point of attack really well too for his size. That's somebody that I would love. I just don't think Green Bay's going to do it. He doesn't meet their usual size thresholds, but that would be a really fun pick. Excuse me. And then, of course, we talked about Lucas Van Ness, Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, all those guys. You can get one of those guys early. I think it could pay huge dividends, and you can always come back and get some of those playmakers a little bit later in the draft. Appreciate that, John. Crayon Eater is back. What's your take on trading any of our stars for draft picks? I get trying to rebuild, but can't you rebuild with some young veterans of our stars for draft picks? So Green Bay is not in a spot where they can basically trade any of their stars away for draft picks until June 1st. So they don't have any salary cap space. And almost every single trade that they would make right now, if they made it right now, would accelerate towards this year's salary cap hit. They've mortgaged all of those contracts into signing bonuses. So as soon as you trade a Bakhtiari or a Jair Alexander or any of those guys, it immediately becomes a huge financial burden. So they can't trade any of those guys until after June 1st. So if you're looking for there to be a big trade, the only exception to that is Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary is the one guy they could trade. A, I don't think they want to or are going to or should trade Rashawn Gary. B, you're not going to get what you should get because he's got 1 year left on his deal and is coming off of a torn ACL. So you'd be trading him at the worst possible time. So even if you were of mind that, like, hey, Green Bay needs to start a more aggressive rebuild and they should really start ripping these Band-Aids and trading away some of these stars, they're just not financially in a place where they can actually literally do it at this point. June 1st, like, let's say they got a Paris Johnson in the draft, and, let's say the Jets called and said, like, hey, we really want Bakhtiari. After June 1st, you could make that work. You could absolutely make that work. And if they were willing to give good money for it, you could absolutely do that. I don't think they will. But after June 1st, Bakhtiari would be the one. if they drafted a tackle in the first round, especially like a Paris Johnson, someone like that, that I would look for that I think is a better possibility than maybe anyone's talking about would be the potential of Bakhtiari getting traded post June 1st. The only other issue there is that some other team would have to be totally fine with taking on the risk with Bakhtiari's medicals. Guess what? If there's a team that's probably going to do that, it's probably the Jets, and just because Rodgers wants to play with them. So that would be one that maybe could happen at that point. Would I be disappointed if Murphy was the pick? It would not be my favorite pick. I'll say that. First of all, with Murphy, and I know we don't scout the jersey. We don't scout the helmet. I'm going to see if I can find this tweet really quick here. I might not be able to, but I went through the other day, and I went through all of the Clemson edge players. Hold on. I got to find this because it's worth going through. Okay, so here we go. This is the full list of Clemson edge rushers going back a while. Clelin Ferrell at pick number 4. Austin Bryant in the 4th round, Shaq Lawson at pick 19, Kevin Dodd in the 2nd round, Vic Beasley at pick 8, Malachi Goodman in the 4th round, Andre Branch in the 2nd round, Daquan Bowers in the 2nd round, Ricky Sapp in the 5th round, Philip Merlin at pick 32, Gaines Adams with pick 4. Clemson edge has been a nightmare, and like none of them have worked out. So it is at the point where I'm a little concerned about Clemson edge rushers, and they have not translated to the NFL at all. And almost every single one of them has been either a bust or a massive, massive bust. So I know we scout the player and we don't scout the jersey. We don't scout the helmet, but I'm giving it at this point a little bit of cause for concern. The other thing, he came in, I think that if you want to look for a really big positive with Murphy, is that when he came in his freshman year, he was good immediately. Like there was no, there's a learning curve. I'm a freshman. I'm 18 years old. He played awesome from day one. And he played awesome at the end of his time at Clemson too. I think the issue, we didn't see much growth from year 1 to year 3. He was good all the way around. We just didn't see him ever really take a step. I personally see him more as like a wide 9 hand in the ground, like edge rusher, more than a stand-up 3-4 outside guy. He also doesn't hit Green Bay's agility thresholds all that well. So I don't think he's going to be there. To me, he's more of a guy in the 20s that would get taken. So at 13, it would be aggressive. I don't think it's a perfect fit. And I'm very worried about Clemson edge rushers. That being said, really good football player. You watch his tape, and the more you watch him, the more that you like. And if they took him, I would just have a lot of hope that he develops and becomes the opposite of every other Clemson edge rusher and becomes a huge hit. And there's a ton of upside there with that pick. So like I said, not my cup of tea, not what I would ideally like to do. But I'd be hopeful because there is a lot of talent there. No question about it. Anyone else's supers here? I think I got everyone. All right, perfect. That means I'm going to take a quick drink of beer here because I want to. So 1 second. All right. I would not mind Sean Clifford out of Penn State at quarterback in their later rounds. They brought him in for a visit. Appreciate the chat, David. They brought him in for a visit, so I would not be surprised. In fact, I think if you want to, I think you could almost pencil in Sean Clifford to Green Bay either as one of their 7th round picks or as an undrafted free agent. I think it's more likely that he gets to Green Bay as an undrafted guy. I do think there's an outside chance that they could go somebody like Clayton Tune in round 4 and then Bajent in like round 7, and then they just don't need an undrafted guy. Like I think they could take 2, QBs, one of them being very late. But if that's the case, maybe they don't need the undrafted guy. But if either they only take 1 QB or they get late in the draft and they haven't taken any, I think Sean Clifford late in the draft or even as an undrafted guy is very, very possible, especially after they brought him in for a visit. By the way, like 7 of the 29 players that we knew visited Green Bay last year are now Green Bay Packers. 6 of them drafted. And then the other was one of the offensive linemen. I can't remember his name at the moment, but one of the offensive linemen that they picked up late in the year on the practice squad. And then they signed in the offseason. So 7 of the 29 guys they brought in a season ago are now on the roster in some capacity. All right, we do have a Jordan here. We've finally moved on to Jordan. It's Salty Jordan. It wasn't Tenuta, by the way, whoever just said that. It was a different one. I'll look it up in a second. You have a Jordan right here. Do you think JSN will even be at 13? I think think that's a $1 million question at the moment, right? Like, does he get taken before 13? Maybe. Like, the Texans could easily be in play. Like, it would be, I don't think the Texans are going to do it, but it'd be kind of cool if for the Texans, if they combine CJ Stroud with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Even if they don't take a QB, I think JSN could be in play for them at pick 12. So I think there's an opportunity that he could be gone. I think it would probably be like a pick or two ahead of them. I don't think there's anyone in the top 10 that's going to take him. So I think you're probably looking at pick 11, pick 12. And then, but I would say if I had to, probably a 75% chance that he's there. The only issue could be that I think probably a lot of teams know that Green Bay at least could be targeting JSN at 13. And so maybe you get a team that trades up to 12. And I think the worst case scenario would be, can you imagine if the Jets trade back up to 12 and take JSN right ahead of Green Bay? That would be a real kick in the you-know-where. Will I be making an appearance on the Cheesehead TV Draft Watch? I do not think I'm going to be making an appearance today. I do hope at some point tomorrow to make an appearance, probably for about 20, 30 minutes. If I can't do that, then I'm for sure going to try to attend at some point on Saturday. So not sure exactly when yet, but I do hope to make it at some point this weekend. Does Gute say kinda a lot? He says a lot of things that are, I guess crutch words or whatever you want to call them. He's got a few things that he says every now and again, but I think overall, what ends up happening from a talent development standpoint and how Green Bay evaluates players, I think there's a lot of work that Green Bay needs to do right now. We're about to find out, by the way, the real value of a lot of people within the Packers organization. Now Brett's gone, Aaron's gone. We're about to see Jordan and what he can do. But now, how do you build a roster without a Hall of Fame quarterback? How do you coach a team without a Hall of Fame quarterback? We are about to learn a lot about this franchise. We're going to learn a lot about Gute. We're going to learn a lot about LaFleur. We're going to learn more, I guess, about Joe Barry. We're going to learn a lot about a lot of people in this franchise, Jordan Love included. And some of it's going to be good. Some of it's going to be bad. Some of it's going to be a learning curve. But we're about to learn a lot more about this franchise, and just buckle in, because I think it's probably going to be a bumpy ride that hopefully smooths out over time. Do I like the Twitter spoilers for picks, or do I try to avoid them? I can't not avoid them for what I do and talking about the picks, and I want to immediately be able to get on here. By the way, I'm not going to do an immediate live hit when a Packers pick gets taken, but when JSN gets picked at pick 13, as soon as I find that out, I will immediately put a quick show together. I'm going to do a quick video. I'm going to record about 10 to 15 minutes on JSN and post that as soon as I can possibly post that. So yes, it helps me because I can know what's happening ahead of time and can immediately start recording right away so that we've got fresh content for you guys. Who will I be extremely happy if drafted in round 2? There are a lot of guys. Let me pull up a list really quick here. Anyone figure out the offensive lineman I can't think about yet? All right, I'm pulling that up quick too. This is great content, me looking up websites, which is just amazing. 1 second. Sorry for the wait, guys. Allows me to take a sip of my beer as well. I'll probably go over the 5 o'clock as well. So I'm gonna stay a little bit more. You guys have been awesome. We got over 500 people in here. So I'm gonna stay a little bit later. The offensive lineman was Gene DeLance, of course, the one and only Gene DeLance. So he was the one I was trying to think of. And then some of my guys in round 2, I don't know. I lost the list. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I really like Campbell, the linebacker out of Iowa. He is somebody that I don't think they're going to take him, but I absolutely love him. One of my favorite guys. I love the 2 Tennessee wide receivers, not necessarily round 2 for Tillman. He might go round 2, but I love both Tennessee wide receivers. DeJuan Jones is not probably a Packer guy, but he's one of my guys from Ohio State. He's an absolute dancing bear. I can't get enough of watching him play. He's super fun. Round 3, I'm going to give you a round 3 guy as well. Israel Abanikane. Running back, I had an opportunity to break him down more today as well. Had the day off today, so spent a lot of time watching tape. He is a guy that I absolutely love. He's got some Amon Green to him, super explosive, only 20 years old, extreme athleticism, catches the ball out of the backfield well, really quick on his feet for his size, just really, really fun player. So not necessarily a round 2 guy, but a round 3 guy, probably more. I don't know. The round 2, round 3 is where I think there's a lot of talent in this draft and a lot of guys that I actually really, really like. Oh, Ant from 707. Super kind of you, my man. Really appreciate that. I just want to say thanks for all you do covering and discussing the Packers all year. Watch your pod daily and have no plans of stopping. Please let it be JSN or Nolan Smith at 13. I'm right there with you. I think both would be phenomenal picks and really, really kind of you. Appreciate that a ton. Thanks. And you just, even without the financials there, really just appreciate you watching every day. Super kind of you. All right, Brett, what do you think the Vikings do? They have the most holes in the division with the least amount of picks, and they need a quarterback. Let me tell you guys, I'm not going to answer that question directly, but I think I'm going to give you a better answer than what you were even hoping for. The Vikings are in the worst position of every team in the NFC North, and I'm so excited about it. So, first of all, they are in total no man's land. And they might win the division this year. They could easily win the division this year. They've got Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and still they've got good pass rushers. They are in position where they can still quite easily win what's probably not a great NFC North this year. They're just going to lose in the first round. If they get lucky in the first round, they're going to lose in the second round. They're going to be the same Minnesota Vikings that we saw a season ago. They're going to regress to the mean. They're not going to win as many close games as they did a season ago. Probably more in that 9-8, 10-7 range at best. And like I said, probably a first round elimination in the playoffs, which is exactly where you want them. Whatsoever. They can gladly be in no man's land for as long as they want to be in their little no man's land. They can be in first round playoff exit for as long as they want to be in first round playoff exit. That's a perfect spot to be in. Never good enough to win playoff games, never bad enough to go get a franchise altering quarterback like a Caleb Williams that would make everything better for them. That is a great spot for them to be in. But the other thing is Kirk Cousins is getting old. They need a quarterback. Dalvin Cook, probably not many prime years left on his career. Justin Jefferson is amazing, and that's a pain in the ass. No question about it. That guy's going to kill the Packers for another decade, which is not great. Christian Darrisaw, phenomenal offensive tackle. He's going to continue to get better. I think Ezra Cleveland's really good inside. But then their defense is aged. Their first round pick last year, Lewis Seen, broke his leg. That's going to set him back. They, after those first few guys that I mentioned, the Jeffersons, the Darrisaws, like the cupboard starts running very dry, very quick. And they've they've traded picks for TJ Hawkinson so that they could try to compete last year, didn't win a playoff game. If I were starting, if you could give me the GM job for any of the 4 teams in the NFC North today, the Vikings is the worst job because they're just in a bad spot. They don't have young, talented players. They don't have a ton of free agent money. They don't have a good draft picks. Like they're in absolute no man's land. The Lions, fun, exciting, up and coming team. They got 2 first round draft picks this year. They got to stop gambling on games. That would help them quite a bit. Jameson Williams, don't do that, but they've got a fun, exciting team. They could easily win the division this year, and they're more up and coming. The quarterback position certainly of a little bit concern, but they might address that today. The Bears, as much as I hate to say it, I don't think actually, I'll say this for Packer fans. The Bears had like $100 million in money to spend, and they did not do a great job in spending it. And they probably overspent on a bad free agent class. This is the worst time to ever have $100 million to spend. They spent a bunch of money on linebackers. Like, I'm okay with what they did, but they still got a ton of future resources. They got a young up and coming quarterback in Justin Fields, which mileage may vary as to what you think he will become. But that's, again, a better, and they have early draft picks this year. They have a ton of draft capital coming up. They're probably going to be bad enough this year again, where they're going to have better draft or good draft picks again next year. They're in a better position than Minnesota too, and as is Green Bay. So perfect answer your question, Brett, but the good news is, as Packer fans, the Vikings are in the worst position of any team. A good spot for them to be in. All right. Donnie, hearing the Cardinals are trying to send number 3 and DeAndre Hopkins to the Titans for 11 plus more, according to Pro Football Talk. That'd be fun. In my mock draft today on the show, I did a quick mock draft at the end of today's preview show, and I had the Titans moving up to pick 3 and going to get in a quarterback in that mock draft. So that would be very, very fun. All right. Tequin Williams. I like that name. I've been loving the draft content. I was wondering how big is the jump between Mayer, Kincaid down to the other tight ends, such as Washington. Where do you see all the tight ends falling? I actually mentioned that today as something that I'm really excited just to see how it plays out. I think there's going to be a first, like I think Kincaid, Mayer go 1-2. And then I think probably Musgrave and Washington go 3-4 in some range. And then I think you're probably looking at Tucker Kraft, Sam Laporta, and either in 5-6 in that realm. That's kind of my guess. But I'm really interested to see how all these guys go off. I like all 6 of those guys that I just mentioned, which is why I don't want to spend pick 13 on it, because I think at one of those picks in the second round, you can get a really, really good one still. But I think that's sort of the groupings. And I really like all of them. I think this is your flavor of choice. Do you want the big hulking blocking tight end in Darnell Washington that has a ton of athletic upside as a receiver, but it's more of a projection? Do you want Kincaid, who's a big wide receiver, but can't really block all that much, coming off an injury, a little bit older than some of the other tight ends? Do you want a Michael Mayer who's do everything? He can give you a little bit of everything, but probably not as good of a receiving tight end as Kincaid, not as good of a receiving tight end, even maybe as a Musgrave or a Laporta. Not as good of a blocker as Washington, but he's good at everything. Musgrave, tall seam tight end. You can use him in a variety of different ways. Not a great blocker, but he's going to be a weapon for some team. I mocked him to Kansas City, and that would just be a pain too. Like if you got Kelsey over here and Musgrave over there, like Andy Reid's just going to have a field day with that. And so is Patrick Mahomes. So I really like all of these tight ends. And I just think it's in the eye of the beholder and what you want and what your typical, what your specific cup of tea is for that tight end position. Oh, Andrew, you're a jerk. Let me just say that. Nice to meet you, by the way. Can you pronounce Adetomiwa Adebaware one last time before he becomes a Packer, and you have to say it every day? Adetomiwa Adebaware. I don't know I think that's how how you say it, but I don't even care at this point. I'm just going to say it however the heck I want. I have the last name down, I think. Adebaware. I'm very confident in that. Adetomiwa is always giving me trouble, but I think I nailed it on the episode today. Adetomiwa Adebaware. So yes, I will do that one more time. I will gladly take Andrew, anytime you want to Venmo or PayPal me $5, you can call me directly, send me the $5, and I will say the name for you as many times as you would like. Whiskey 61. I want Tucker Kraft. Me too, buddy. He's a really fun player. Round 2 would be a really fun choice. And I've seen some mocks where he goes round 3 and he's still there when Green Bay takes him. Man, if you could get Tucker Kraft round 3, that is a dream. Even though, let me just say this. Every player who is picked in this draft can become amazing. Every player in this draft can be extremely good and as good as any player in the history of the NFL if they, reach their ceiling. Except Green Bay's 3rd round pick. They will bust out of the league. And if I was an agent in the NFL, I would not let my player get picked in the 3rd round by the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers should do everyone a service and trade away all of their 3rd round picks. The NFL should just strip the Packers of if they screw up one more 3rd round pick, just strip it away from them. They don't deserve it anymore. We're done with 3rd round picks if they can't get a good 3rd round pick this year. But Tucker Kraft, even though I don't wish that upon him, I don't wish a Green Bay's 3rd round pick upon anyone at this point, but if it has to be someone, I guess I'll take Tucker Kraft. Let's see. Who is the prospect at safety you think the Packers could have a shot at? Jartavius Martin, safety out of Illinois, is the one that just screams off the page Green Bay Packer to me. Had him in for a visit, high RAS score, just turned 23 if memory serves. Can play in Joe Barry's defense, can play single high, can match up a little bit in the slot, has great speed, great versatility. There's not a lot of safeties that fit really well. There's just not, especially early in the draft. And I think Jartavius Martin is the first one that actually makes a lot of sense. If he's, again, I don't wish any 3rd round picks upon anyone, but if he's there in 3rd round, like I will put it in permanent marker right now. If Jartavius Martin is there 3rd round, unless there's someone crazy that is still there ahead of him, if he's still there, I would very much expect Jartavius Martin to be the guy in the 3rd round. Will we draft a kicker on day 3? I think the answer is yes. Don't know who, don't know when, but I think the answer is yes. I would be a little bit surprised if they don't. Look for them to probably grab at least 1, if not 2, in undrafted free agency. This is a fun one. All right, Lucas, what do you think of Jonathan Mingo? He was another guy that I spent a lot more time on today. I really like him. I really, really like him. And first of all, if we're going to talk about Clemson, edge rushers not turning out, let's talk about the most recent Ole Miss wide receivers that have, and DK Metcalf and AJ Brown. He's not either of those guys. He's not as good as either of them. But man, this is a big physical outside wide receiver that has blazing speed, that can break tackles, ridiculous stiff arm, that can separate at the catch point. Like, he can do a lot of the stuff that Jalen Hyatt can with speed, but he also has power and can make ridiculous one-handed catches at the catch point. Like, he's really, really fun. In total transparency, I want to actually spend even a little bit more time on him. I'm going to spend even more time on him tomorrow because I know he's not going to get taken today. Spent a little bit of time on him before, spent more time on him today, but man, I really, really like him. And if you can get him on, again, another guy in day 3, or maybe you move down around, heck, if they with their second round pick, if they took Jonathan Mingo, I wouldn't be upset. I think he has that type of upside. Cedric Tillman, by the way, stiff, but another outside wide receiver that I like all of the Tennessee players, by the way. Darnell Wright, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, the edge rusher whose name's escaping me at the moment. Was it Bryant Young, whatever it is. He's really fun too. Like, I like all the Tennessee players. Like, just put together a Tennessee draft. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if Darnell Wright went first round to some team and then Jalen Hyatt in the second, Cedric Tillman in the third, Young in the fourth? Like, you could put together a really impressive draft just taking Tennessee guys. And it's like all those guys probably go first, second, third, fourth. So you could probably do it. Byron Young. Thank you, Mark. Will Josh Myers be the week 1 starter at center? How do I want to say this? I hope so, because I hope he just balls out. I'll put it that way. I hope he is, because when he got picked, listen, he wasn't Creed Humphrey. I don't fully understand why Green Bay overthought that, but I really liked him coming out of college. I really, really liked him. When I watched him on tape, I really thought he was going to be a really good starting center for a long time. And the last 2 years, I thought his rookie year, there were the normal rookie ups and downs, but you saw the flashes and you're like, okay, if he can just eliminate the downs, at least some of them, we're good. Like, he's going to be a good center. He may not be the next Mike Flanagan. He might not be the next, whomever, or Corey Linsley, whatever center you want to put in there. Green Bay's had a good run with centers, but I think he can be solid. And then I thought he took a major step back in year 2. And I will say this, Aaron got after him a lot, and there was a lot of responsibility on his plate. Maybe there's more because you don't have an MVP quarterback behind you, but maybe there's less because Aaron's not going to be quite as demanding, or Jordan's not going to be quite as demanding of the center as probably Aaron was. And I do think there's a point where Josh just needs to go out and play. So much so that I actually wonder if he should get moved to guard. I think he's just thinking too much. I think if he could just go out and play and not have to worry about the assignments and who's lined up where, I think he could actually be a pretty good guard. I wouldn't hate if they moved Elton to center and moved, depending on what happens in the draft, obviously, but moved Elton to center and moved John back to left guard, or even just kept John at right guard and had Josh and Zach fight for left guard. I wouldn't hate that. I think that would be a decent thing to try to do, because I do think there's upside there. But I'll put the other way I'll put it is that if he doesn't improve, if we don't see a step in any way from Josh Myers, then he can't be the center. Like, you've got to put Elton there. Like, if he doesn't take a step, then it needs to be Bach, and then probably Zach, Tom, Elton Jenkins, or maybe Tom at center. That's possible too. But one of those two guys, left guard, center, Runyon at right guard, and then Yash at right tackle. So. And then Josh just becomes the swing guy in the inside. Appreciate you again, Judy. Love your content. Any tight ends come to mind that didn't get a second contract and blossomed with a new team? Trying to think off the top of my head. I know there was one. Let me think on that a little bit, Judy. I know there were a few that I was keeping an eye on. I thought actually it ended up not paying off quite as much as I thought it was going to, but Eric Ebron was somebody who started playing a little bit better with his second team, but then kind of fell off. I don't even think he was with a team last year. Evan Ingram this past year, I thought was a lot better with the Jaguars than he was with the New York Giants in his rookie contract. I thought, even though it wasn't a new team, I thought David Njoku, and they had to franchise him and then pick him up for the additional year and so on and so forth. But I thought he actually started playing a heck of a lot better in his fifth year, right around that time, than what he was in year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. I actually think TJ Hawkinson is going to be one of those guys that takes a pretty significant jump over the next couple seasons. So I think we've seen it. I just probably have to do a little bit more thought on that than off just the top of my head. Good question, though. Ian, super kind of you. Do you think the Jets would have traded the 13th pick to the Packers if they thought they were going to take a tackle? I feel like they had to have that conversation. It's an obvious need for New York. I don't know. I think they were probably at a point where they just needed to get the deal done, and that swapping 13 and 15 wasn't a deal breaker. And also knowing that if they want to get from 15 to 10, 11, 12, whatever, to get a tackle, they can probably do so. Like, that's not going to be a deal breaker. They can give up a future pick. They can give up, they've got players they can trade, quite frankly. They've got another second round pick still. They've got, there's things that they can do to get up and draft a tackle if they still want to. And they could easily get to early first round or like pick 10. And there could be, multiple tackles still on the board, and they could feel comfortable even just staying at 15, and maybe one of them actually falls to them as well. It wouldn't shock me. In fact, I would, if I were saying right now, I bet Darnell Wright gets to 15, and maybe he's just their pick at 15. That would not shock me either. So it probably played a little bit of a factor, but my guess is they just needed to get the deal done and realize that they needed to get up from 15. They can probably do so. Tight end choice, Kraft or Laporta? My first question would be, can I get Kraft in the third? If I can get Kraft in the third over Laporta in the second, it's a no-brainer. I would take Kraft in the third over Laporta in the second. I might take Kraft over Laporta, just straight up. I really like Kraft, but they're both really good, and I'd be excited about both of them. So this is another, like, pick your flavor. And like, it is the crazy, like, if Green Bay doesn't have a tight end room, I've said this a variety of times, they've got a H-back, fullback, hybrid kind of tight end in DeGuara, and then it's Tyler Davis, and you don't have a tight end room. And if that's your tight end room, you don't have a tight end room. If you were ever going into a draft without a tight end room, this was the draft to go in. There is a ton of depth. I watched Josh Wiley, the tight end from Cincinnati, recently too, who Green Bay had in for a visit. He's another really fun player, probably fourth round type of guy, probably early fourth would be my guess, maybe compensatory third, but he's another really, really fun player too, that I think if you get third round, that sort of range would be a really nice pick for them. This is a really fun tight end class. And again, a lot of it's going to be in the eye of the beholder. All right, just going to probably do a couple more guys. Let's see. All right, John, what if Packers trade for Buddy Baker? Would it be worth one of the seconds? If not, when should Buda Baker, I'm assuming, would it be worth one of the seconds? If not, when should Pack pick a safety? It's a major need right now. I don't think they're going to trade for Buda Baker. There's just no money, guys. I just don't think they're going to do it. Yeah, so I don't think they're going to trade for any veteran. This is not the season to go and get those guys. This is a season to develop young players. So I think, like I said, third round, Jartavius Martin, Quan Martin, whatever you want to call him, is probably going to be the guy that they target in round 3. I think there's like Mapu, the Sacramento State guy. He could be a linebacker, could be a safety, but he's really fun too. I think there's a variety of ways that they could go, but don't expect a high-priced veteran to come in at any position at this point. They don't have the money, and that's not what they should be spending stuff on right now. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate I think it was just a tip, so I appreciate that, OGDOM. All right, a couple more here. Just want to make sure I didn't miss any of the super chats. I think I missed this one. If both on the board, Darnell Wright or Broderick Jones, I really don't mean to punt on some of these questions, but I like both of these guys a lot. Darnell Wright is one of my guys in this draft. I absolutely love him. I think I like Wright more than I like Broderick Jones. I think Broderick Jones might make a little bit more sense for Green Bay due to his versatility, but I like both of them. I'll say Wright. If I had to choose, I would take Darnell Wright. I think they would go Broderick Jones. I would be very pleased with either pick. And like I said, I think I like Darnell Wright just a little bit more. Appreciate that, man. All right. I think I got to everyone that super chatted at least. Listen to Packer Madman. Hit that like button. Really appreciate you. This is an interesting one. I could talk about this stuff for days. Part of me just wants to stay on for like another hour. That'd be really fun, but probably got to get, I'm going to lose my voice if I do this all weekend. By the way, I'm going to be back here tomorrow at same time, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central, live Q&A. We'll talk about obviously what Green Bay did in the first round. We'll preview the second round and third round, a heck of a lot more. And then I'm also going to do a live post-draft Q&A immediately following the draft on Saturday. So I don't know the time yet because it depends on when the draft ends, but look forward to that as well. As soon as the draft is over, we'll probably give it 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll do a live Q&A right after that. But yes, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit that like button. Appreciate you, Scotty P. But how does present day JSN compare to 2011 draft day Randall Cobb? JSN's just a better all-around wide receiver. I would say he is more of a complete package at the position than Randall was at the time. Randall is shorter. Randall's a little bit more quick twitchy, a little bit more juke after the catch, a little bit more what Ben Fennell calls yak juice. Can escape a little bit more, juke a little bit more return ability. JSN is much better separator, much better route runner. I would say better hands, and I think can just win in a variety of different ways. I think Randall was a bit more of a projection. I think JSN is a really good wide receiver from day one. I think that's why you see probably about a full, 1 round difference. JSN probably top 10, top 15 pick. Randall Cobb, mid second round pick-ish. And I think that's really the big difference there. Carl, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining. Would I dislike Bijan at pick 13? I am team no running back round 1. I don't believe it. I don't think it helps your team. I think there's better ways to spend it. It'd be a heck of a lot of fun though. Would certainly help everyone on Madden. And yeah, he's a really fun player. He's a really, really fun player. I just don't think it's the best use of draft resources. Also, sneakily, quietly, I kind of like Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama a little bit more than Bijan. I know that's taboo. You can't say any running back in this draft is better than Bijan, but they're at least in the same realm for me. And I really love Jahmyr Gibbs. So I would much rather they trade back. If they're going to take a running back round 1, I would much rather you trade back, pick up a bunch of draft capital, and take the running back. And this is beyond freaking amazing. Super, super nice of you, man. Thank you for all your Packers content. Could you maybe be more concise in the future in your videos? Not trying to be mean, but much love. Hey, if you want to tip $100, you can be as mean as you want to be. I am totally fine with that. A couple things. My videos are meant to be almost more podcast-ish, meaning more 20, 30 minutes-ish. You can also find them on the audio podcast as well, most days. So they're more meant for that. And I'm just giving you a video alternative. That being said, I am going to try to create some more short form content as a bonus, as like an aside video, like a second video that's maybe 5 to 10 minutes each day. So keep an eye out for those. I did one the other day with some potential trades that Green Bay could do up and down in the draft, which was like a 12-minute video and was much more concise and quick and to the point. So I'm going to try to do some more of those. So if you are looking for more short form content, 5, 10, 12 minutes at most, I'm going to try to do more of that. When I started the entire YouTube project, my hope was to be 10-minute videos. And I just love talking Packers far too much. So the majority of these are probably still going to be 20, 30 minutes-ish, if I'm being real, because even when I go into a video and I think it's going to be 10 minutes, it ends up being 30 minutes. But I am going to try to do some more concise videos. So you can hopefully look forward to those. And Vex, super, super kind of you. All right. Hit like AJ Hawk hit fan at golf match. I don't know exactly what that means, Chris, but yes, hit like. All right. D-hop to the Cards and Titans move to 3. Is that done? Can we confirm? Is that done? Anyone else? Oh, Rappaport just said it's not true. Hey, beware of non-check marks and everything like that tonight. There's going to be a lot of Barry on there, Barry on here, whatever it is, pretending to break news on stuff. So just be very careful. Apparently, Marcus sees that this is not true as of this time. It sounds like there was maybe some conversations per Rappaport, but turn your notifications on for people that you trust and trust no one else, especially today, especially with all the weird checkmark stuff. All right. Anyone else? Any last final super chats before I get out of here? All right. Really excited for tonight. I think this is going to be a really fun draft for Green Bay. I think it's going to be a really fun draft overall. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. Hopefully we get a JSN or somebody just really, really fun at pick 13. No matter what, remember, sometimes it's the ones you're least expecting that end up being phenomenal football players. Maybe even in later rounds, you never quite know. And give these players a little bit of time to develop. And the ones that we're talking about 3-4 years from now aren't always the first round picks. A lot of times it's the third, fourth, not third, second, fourth, fifth round guys that end up being the real surprises of the draft. So just remember that too. And just going to be a really fun evening. Really appreciate all of you guys joining me. Really appreciate all the super chats and the and everything, the tips, all of it. Super nice. As a reminder, I will be here 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow, Central Standard Time on Friday, prior to round 2 of the draft. So make sure to stick around join that tomorrow. And then immediately following Saturday, I will be on Talking Packers again and wrapping up the entirety of the draft. I'm still going to do a big video, probably more than 30 minutes, Vex, probably more than 30 minutes on breaking down everything that happens in the draft each day. So that'll launch at 5 a.m. every day. And then Vex, I am going to do a short video immediately following each pick. I'm going to try to get that up as soon as possible following the draft. Plus I've done a bunch of prospect videos already. So let's say they take JSN. I did a huge video on him. So I'll make sure to retweet that on Twitter right away as well. So appreciate all of you guys. I will see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Please no tight end. Vex, you just keep it up, man. I appreciate you. I'm with that. Team no tight end. If they trade back, it's fine, but enjoy the draft, everyone. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 4 p.m. Make sure to check out all the content between then and now. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go and enjoy the freaking NFL draft. Best day of the year.